Hey y'all, my name is Ashley and today I'm going to be sharing with you my final thoughts on the Lunar Beauty's Life's a Drag Facelift palette. I'm also going to share 3 different looks that I did with this palette so you know that I have truly used this palette and I can express my thoughts and feelings on all the shades and how I feel about it. So if that sounds interesting to you, then keep on watching. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and scoot over because right down here, I'm gonna go ahead and start showing you the 3 different looks and how I got them using Lunar Beauty's Life's Drag palette. The first look is going to be me using more of the nude shades, more of like the everyday wearer. And the second one is going to be a more bold and colorful look, but still those colors that you can still use every day. And then finally, the last look is actually the one I have on my eyes now with more of the bold and adventurous colors. I'm gonna go ahead and talk to you about the palette just a little bit itself. This is what it looks like on the inside. And the palette has 21 shades. 17 of those shades are mattes. There is 1 satin finish and 3 of them are metallic or glitter toppers. This palette retails for $48. Now I want to go ahead and compare it to the original Life of Drag palette, which only had 14 shades. 7 of those shades are mattes, 1 satin finish, and then 2 toppers or metallic shades. And I honestly can't remember how much the original retailed for, but this is the packaging of the original, and this is the packaging of the new one. Honestly, I prefer the packaging of the new one over the old one, especially when it comes to the size as well. This is a little bit more harder to store than this one. But let's go ahead and dive into swatching the brand new shades. The nude shades that are newer with All Tea, which is a very peachy nude. And then we have the shade Diva, which is a light peachy pink. Then we have the shade Meaty, which is a very warm red toned brown. Ooh, there we go, much better. For the more colorful shades, we got the shade Correct, which is a very vibrant orange. Then the shade Clocked, which is a beautiful purple toned blue, which is actually on my eyes right now. And then we also have the shade Come On Sis, which is a gorgeous green at the bottom. And finally, the last new shade would be Full Fantasy, which is a clear-based glitter topper. Well, unfortunately now my arm is covered in glitter. I don't know if you can see that. But now that you've seen the new shade swatch, I want to swatch the shades that are in both palettes side by side so you can see a difference. Let's go ahead and start with our nude selection. And the first shade I'm going to go ahead and swatch is Cake Face, which is a matte white. So the top one's going to be from the original palette right there. And the bottom one is going to be from the newer palette. So you can already see quite a bit of difference. And the way that I am swatching them is that I'm just like going like this in the pan and then pressing with the same amount of pressure. So obviously Cake Face in the newer palette is much more vibrant and more pigmented. Now I'm going to go ahead and swatch the shade Sickening. This one is from the original palette. Now this is a very neutral nude. Obviously, I don't know if the camera's picking up, but it's very similar to my skin tone. And then the new one is down below it. And from the new palette, it actually looks more neutral, and then the older palette actually kind of looks a little bit more peachy. So there's kind of a difference in shade there. Next nude I'm going to swatch is the shade Hunty. The first one is from the old palette. So this is a very cool toned nude. And the bottom one is going to be from the new palette. Those seem to have swatched just about the same, honestly. Next, I'm going to dip into the shade Shady, which is the matte black in the palette. So that is from the original palette. And this is from the new palette. So honestly, I feel like they swatch the same. Okay, so now let's go ahead and swatch the shade Trade. Start off with the old palette again. So there's that. And the one from the new palette. Honestly, I believe the second one has got a little bit more red toned in it and much more pigmented. And finally, the last shade from the nude side is Mug, which is like a chocolate brown. And then the new one. That one is way more pigmented than the original. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the more bold and colorful side. Starting off with the shade Campy. The old one. And the new one. The bottom one is much more vibrant than the top one. Then the shade Kai Kai, which is a bright pink. Ooh, that one is chalky. That is from the original palette. And then this one is from the new palette. So, and I actually have the shade Kai Kai on my face right now. It's not as soft as the original one. I feel like once I put my finger on the original one, it kind of broke apart, and in the new one, it did not. But if you look, it is much more vibrant than the original palette. Now I'm dipping into Pageant Queen, which is a beautiful purple. That one is from the original palette. And again, from the new palettes. This shade is also on my eyes currently. Next, I'm dipping into Snatched from the old palette and from the new palette. I really enjoy what Snatch looks like from the new palette. It's more of a raspberry tone, and in the original palette, it's more like a darker raspberry with more brown tones opposed to the more red tone in it. All right, then we have the shade Kiki from the original palette right here. And that, if you can see, it barely shows up. And this one is from the new palette, which obviously shows up much better. And finally, from the colorful side, we have the shade Fishy. So this one is more of a satin finish. This is from the original palette and from the new palette, which is also on my inner corner today. So definitely you can see a difference in the shade Fishy from both palettes. Now finally, the last few shades of swatch are the metallic topper-like shades. The first one I'm going to swatch is the shade Beat from the original palette, which when I'm right now swatching it, it feels very scratchy. There's Beat. And then the new Beat is very like soft and almost like creamy. And there is the new Beat. It's much more blinding than the original. And finally, the shade Legendary, which is a beautiful gold topper from the original palette. And then from the new palette. So there's that. You can definitely tell the toppers from the new palette are much more blinding than the original palette. I've had my original palette since it came out. So, I mean, yeah, it's aged, but it's also powdered products. Meaning, it's not, it may say it may be bad after 12 months, but honestly, in reality, there's no mold growing in my palette. It doesn't smell funny. It still swatches, it still plays nicely. To me, it's not expired, but each to their own and own to their each. If you choose to throw out your palettes after 12 months, throw them out. If it's not molded, if it doesn't smell bad, then I'm gonna keep using it. Ooh, that is like not coming off. But, so those are both palettes swatched, and now I wanna go ahead and talk about my final thoughts using the brand new Facelift palette. I absolutely love this palette. As you can see, I am doing 3 looks down here in this corner using this palette, but I have used this palette way more than that. I have dipped into every single shade. The only issue I had with this palette is using the shade Clocked. I would have to pack it on to get the pigment to stay on my eyes and then blend it out. I couldn't just use the shade and blend because it would lighten quite a bit. So to get that deep purple blue, I would have to pack it multiple times to get the shade that I wanted that looks like in the pan itself. But besides that, the mattes in here are gorgeous. They blend out so nicely, obviously for multicolored looks. The toppers are gorgeous. Right now I have the shade Full Fantasy right here as a little bit of a glimmer on my eyes. I do use the colorful side much more often than I do use the nude side, but both sides are fantastic. So 21 shades, for $48 is such a good deal. Yes, the pans are small in this palette, but in reality, if you are collecting makeup, using makeup, do you know how long it's going to take you to go through a small size like this compared to the bigger pans in this one? Like, look, I've had this for years and I haven't hit pan on them. So it's going to take me a long time to hit pan on these as well. But I will say that my favorite shades from this palette are definitely going to have to be Kai Kai, Clocked, Kiki, and I'm in love with the Topper Row right here. And the black is fantastic to deepen up. It's not too pigmented when you apply it, so you can use it to deepen up the other shades in the palette without them getting muddy or going straight to black, which I showed in the first look that I did do with this palette. It's just an all-round fantastic palette, and I recommend this palette to absolutely everyone. It is worth every penny. I feel like Lunar Beauty's quality has just gotten better and better with each palette. I do have all of their palettes. If I'm correct, I do have a review already up from like the Greek Goddess collection. And I'm not gonna lie, I was not impressed with that palette, but I'm impressed with this one for sure. And I used his lashes. His lashes in the style Nova are my absolute favorite. I have them on right now. It's empty. I don't even know why I grabbed it. But I have backups of these ones because they are just amazing. They're comfortable. They flatter any eye look that I have done so far with this palette and other palettes. So with that being said, thank y'all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like this video. Subscribe because I do have more of these final thoughts videos coming up if that sounds interesting to you. But until next time, bye y'all.